he come to the house and he wanted to complain about his lovely wife, Judy. And I said, it's got nothing to do with Judy. Nothing to do, what do you mean it's got everything to do with Judy? I said, it's got nothing to do with Judy. It's got everything to do with you. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, okay? It has nothing to do with your spouse. You only have power over yourself. Are you with me? God only gives you grace over yourself, not over the other person. Amen. And so Neil would get frustrated with me. In fact, sometimes he'd get mad at me. He'd come out. I say, forget about Judy. It's your life. It's God's grace. It's what you do. What Judy does has nothing to do with you. Yes, you're married. But the only person that you can change, Neil, is who? Myself. Neil himself. And we have to learn that. And hopefully in that process, it influences the other people that we are around. So, tonight, after we're all finished, yes, we'll have questions and answers, but I've got a favor to ask. I'd like to have you give a one-sentence testimony of what has happened to you during this 5 days. Just one sentence. Be thinking about it. Ask God to say, what do you want me to share with my brothers and sisters? They want to know what's happening with you, because things are happening with them. And they want to be encouraged. What has happened to you in this 5 days? What has God said to you? What is God asking you to do? What are you already starting to do? Just in one sentence. Nothing complicated. We'll ask that at the end. 2 principles, right? Quite powerful principles. First principle is coming under God, isn't it? It is the hardest thing that I've had to deal with in Christianity. It's nothing to go to a church. It's nothing to sing to God. It's nothing to accept doctrines. It's nothing to change your diet. It's nothing to change your dress, but to come under God and allow Him to be the Lord of your life and give Him and filter everything through God. There's nothing of Jim Hohnberger left. And that's why Christianity is so weak today. And that's why our marriages are falling apart today. We gotta come under God. That means that you are no longer in charge. That's what it means to be born again, you know that? Yeah. Born again means there's a new life in you. The old life doesn't operate anymore. The new life, that new life is the power of the Holy Spirit through His Word operating in you. That's what it means to be born again. So if Neil comes to my house and he's complaining about his wife, brother, you need to be born again. Leave her alone. You need a new life. Are you with me? That's what it means to be converted. You're converted from operating in who you were before to filtering everything through Jesus Christ. Amen. So are you converted? Are you born again? When Neil goes to the pearly gates, God is going to say, how's Judy? God's going to say, how did you treat Judy? If he hasn't learned how to treat his wife like a queen, guess what? Those pearly gates may not open. So you need to ask yourself, are you under God? That's what it means to be a Christian. And then our second principle, and because we're just doing some review here, is we do what? We prioritize the other person more than ourselves. That's what Jesus did when He came down to heaven, and He prioritized every one of us more than Himself. In fact, it cost Him His life. Not complicated, is it? Are you going to prioritize the other person? Now, I don't want to pick on Neil, but he'd come to my house and he'd complain about Judy, or he'd have a spat or something. I said, so are you prioritizing? But, no, are you prioritizing? But she did. Are you prioritizing her? We can't change Judy, but we can do something about who? Neil. That's the only one. So, those are the 2 principles. And then there's only one question to ask. What's the question? Lord. Acts 9:6. What is it? Lord, what would thou have me to do? That's the only question you've got to ask. In every circumstance of life. It's the only question. Lord, what do you want me to do? So tonight we're going to talk about extravagant love. Not love. I hear a lot of men say, love you. I don't think the wives are too impressed. No, not love you. Extravagant love. I take from my text tonight, Romans 5:8. God demonstrates his own love towards us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we are still sinners, we do everything we can for our spouse. It isn't if our spouse changes. Our spouse may have the worst past that there is and the worst present that there is. And Jesus says you die for that person. You don't have to say, well, when my spouse gets perfect or when they're a little bit better. No, right now you put the principles into practice regardless of what your spouse does or doesn't do. That's what Jesus did for us. That's the text. While we were still what? Sinners. And I hear a lot of spouses come to me and say, well, when he gets better, then I'll love him. Or when he behaves better, then I'll prioritize him. That's what the ladies tell me. And I say, no. Then you're not even a Christian. You may go to the right church, you may believe the right doctrines, but you're not a Christian. What do you mean? I've had women tell me, you're saying I'm not a Christian? Yeah, I'm saying you're not a Christian. Because Christians follow Jesus Christ. And what Jesus did is he died for us when we were brats, when we were immoral, when our behavior was lousy. He didn't say, when you get better, then I'll work with you. A Christian looks at the other person regardless of their behavior. They give themselves for that person entirely. Welcome to Christianity. Can you imagine if even half the church would do that? Boy, there would be a revival of godliness like we've never seen. If only half the churches would do that in their marriages, Christians. We would have a revival all across the whole world. It's not complicated, is it? And that's what Jesus is waiting for us to do. And you have to decide what you're going to do. You can't change the church. You can't change your spouse. You can do something with Jesus in your marriage. And that's powerful. Love is extravagant. Love is extravagant in the price it is willing to pay. It's extravagant in the time it is willing to give. And it is extravagant in the sacrifice it is willing to enter into. So let's take the first one. So what is the price of extravagant love? When I was working with Neil was to put away the love killers. He had a lot of love killers in his life that was crucifying his wife to the point that she became so numb that she didn't want anything to do. So he's got to deal with the love killers to reawaken love. Isn't that right? So what is God saying to you? You think Neil's the only one that has love killers in his marriage? We all do. I had love killers. I did with Sally. Extravagant love doesn't say Sally's got to change. Extravagant love says that Jim Hohnberger has to deal with the love killers in our marriage and put them away. Solomon said it very good. If you take a look at Solomon, we're told that Solomon was the wisest man in the world, right? He says, catch all the foxes, those little foxes, before they ruin the vineyard of love. Solomon 2:15. Catch them all. And the biggest fox in my life was self-centeredness. I think it's the biggest fox in all of our lives.
Mankind.
Not being under God. And it creeps in 1,000 different ways. Let me take my life. Let me show you one of my fox killers. And I'm going to ask some of the fox killers in your life. So, Sally was going through a gardening magazine, okay? And she came across, she saw this white picket fence. She's always wanted this white picket fence. And we were living up in Montana, looking out the Rocky Mountains at the time, okay? And so she tears the page out of the gardening book, and she puts a smiley face, and she puts an arrow to the white picket fence. Can we get this? And I look at the white picket fence, you know, I got a lot of logic, you know. I'm gifted with a lot of common sense. And I think to myself, you know, I don't bring this before God, just my good, great common sense and logic, right? I think to myself, we don't need a white picket fence. I mean, we got the biggest white picket fence with the Rocky Mountains with all the snow top. And that white fence in the yard, it would distract from me looking at my mountains. So I put a sad face on it, put it back on her desk. Case settled, right? I felt pretty good about it. Pretty good logic, isn't it?
Yes.
Nobody's cooperating with me tonight. So 1 year goes by, all right? And Sally talks to me about that white picket fence, you know, and I just left it alone. So the next year, the same white picket fence is in the same gardening book.
It's on sale now.
It's on sale now, see her? She's already lobbying for her case. And so she takes the little sticky notes and she puts 2 smiley faces on it. And puts an arrow to it. Jim, I really like this white picket fence. Okay, so it comes to my desk. And I look at it and I say, well, she just doesn't give up on that. And so I use my male logic, my good understanding, think about our finances, and I put a sad face and I put it back on her desk. And I figure the case is closed. And then I just keep hearing all this lobbying for this white picket fence. And so I was on my knees one morning and I said, Lord, is there anything you want to bring to my attention? And all of a sudden, up comes this white picket fence. And my thoughts went something like this. Jim, is that white picket fence really that bad? Well, no, but we don't need it. Jim, is it immoral? I don't like the direction of this conversation with God. Well, no, it's not immoral. Jim, do you have the finances? I mean, can you see where this thing is going? And I'm talking to God now. I'm not dealing with Sally. And it starts coming down. And it says, Jim, wouldn't it be nice if Sally could have that white picket fence and she wants to put all those flowers out there? And one of my arguments was that I got to mow around it and I got to weed around it, you know, and I got to water and I got to, you know, I had all my cases lined up, all right? And God said, really, Jim? Really? That was a fox in our marriage. Not a big thing, was it? That's not a gigantic thing, but it's the attitude, isn't it? It's the attitude, it's the disposition. Who's in charge in my marriage? And if we do that in multiple areas, are you with me? That isn't just isolated to a white picket fence, is it? That attitude, that disposition flows through the marriage. It isn't just an isolated area. So who's in charge with this white picket fence thing? Jim Hohnberger or God? And I talk about you got to come under God, right? And you have to do what? Prioritize the wife. So here's a little fox in my marriage, right? So you know what I did? I took out one of those little sticky notes, I put a smiley face on it, and I said, buy it. And it was taken care of. She got her white picket fence. And that fox is gone. So what kind of foxes do you have in your marriage? You want to share a fox that you have? You don't want to share a fox? Dan, you don't want to share a fox? Oh, come on. You're not perfectly in love, are you? You perform perfectly. Anybody have a fox here that troubles them? A fox over here. What's one of your foxes?
I told her I was going to surprise her.
Talk loud.
I told her I was going to surprise her. One of my foxes is not running by her plans before I make them, thinking that, oh, she'll be fine with this. Ooh, that's not good.
Okay. Anybody else have a fox? A fox in somebody's life that they'd like to share. What is it? Certainly there's got to be something going on in your marriage. Not just with Jim Hohnberger. You have a fox.
This is something we've worked on for several years, but sarcasm can be a very negative thing. It sounds cute, it sounds okay, but it's not always okay.
Sarcasm has to be taken care of. That's got to be moderated. That's got to be filtered through God, doesn't it? How about another fox? Anybody want to share a fox? Maybe it's in the past or the present. I just wanted everybody to know that we're all human, aren't we? Any other foxes out here? Bob, you must have a fox. I'm sure you do. Neil?
Going along with the same line there, I've made some mistakes as far as when I purchase something, I don't talk to her first, and I buy it, and
Their money pits.
money pits, And so we've come to the agreement that we don't purchase anything unless both of us agree on it.
He would buy things in their marriage without even discussing it with her. Well, sometimes that's a good logic because the other person may say no, right?
Right.
So that's being in charge, right? I'm afraid to bring this before my spouse, so I'll just get it. And my wife would do this too. She'd buy things and then she would bring them home and she wouldn't let me discover them until company was in the house. Lower motivation to behave, right? Are you with me?
Well, if you'd have been a little more giving, that wouldn't have been a problem, you know?
So what are the foxes in your marriage? Come on, is there another fox?
We had five.
We all have them, don't we? Neil, you have a fox?
You've already mentioned this a time or two, but I need to learn to develop the art of listening to my wife, or the art of listening and not trying to solve her problems.
Ooh. How many husbands here are good listeners?
Oh.
Come on, how many husbands here? Come on, honestly. How many, you're pushing this, you got a listener? Praise God, congratulations. Men have a hard time with listening.
Mine wears earplugs for me.
Your husband wears earplugs.
For bed.
Sounds like we could use a born-again experience there, right? The problem is we have earplugs against God, too. That's the real sad thing, isn't it? When we don't listen to God. And we say we're Christians, right? And we go to a good Christian church. Yet we got earplugs against God or against our spouse. Are we playing a game? Are we half converted? Are we half born again? So we all have foxes, don't we? So we have to learn to deal with those foxes, don't we? So are you going to love your spouse when they get rid of all their foxes? Is that when you're going to start the game? No, you start it now. Present tense. That's what Jesus did for you. So, extravagant love does what? It takes a sticky note, puts a smiley face on it, and says what? Buy it. Why? Because you prioritize the other person. Right now is the Holy Spirit saying to you, take out a sticky note and say something to your spouse. Because we didn't come here to listen to Jim Hohnberger. Jim Hohnberger has no wisdom. And you are not to follow Jim Hohnberger or Sally Hohnberger. You're not to follow any person but God. We're only here to suggest to you how we are following God. What we have found has worked. And that's not following another person. That's following Jesus Christ. So you need to be asking yourself right now, and you need to be listening presently with what God is asking you to do. What fox is He asking you to deal with? Not what fox you want your spouse to deal with. What fox God wants you to deal with. That's what makes you a Christian. You follow that? A lot of people believe they're Christians and they're not. You know that. There's not going to be a lot of professed Christians in heaven because they've been in charge. And we have to honestly deal with that. So, the big question after the number one is, are you willing? Honestly now, are you willing before God to say, I'll put away the foxes. I'll pay the price. That's extravagant love. If you're not willing, then your jeopardy of walking with Jesus is in trouble. Because guess what? You're the one running the show, not God. That's scary. That's very scary. Number two, love is extravagant in the time it is willing to give. Your marriage must be made a priority. I can remember when this came to me. Oh, it was one of the toughest things I had to deal with. The time, will I give my time to my loved one? And Sally had been asking me all week, can we get together? We need to talk. There's things we need to talk about. We had two boys at the time, age 3 and 5. And I says, yeah, during the week, I says, let's do it on Sunday. And then when I was at church, I invited the pastor and all the elders over to my house for the Green Bay Packer game on Sunday and the pregame show. And here we are sitting there watching the pregame show. I say my wife comes walking out of the kitchen. I used to be a left halfback on the Hampton Terror Squad. It wasn't my physical size, it was my tenacity and speed. Okay, I loved the game. And so all the big spiritual men of the church are where? In my home. My wife comes around the corner and she says, honey, oh my. Lord, you want to ask a man to give up a Green Bay Packer game. I mean, Lord, they're playing the Chicago Bears. They're arch rivals. Lord, extravagant love doesn't go that far, does it? Now, why do I pick that one out right now? Because we're right in that season, aren't we? Priorities. Don't women or the spouse rate themselves according to the priorities of where you throw your time? And so God was asking me, will you give Sally that time? And then God brought it to mind. I'm not telling you what to do, by the way. You got to ask God, because God will deal with you differently than me. I'm only giving my testimony of what God was doing with me. And then God brought it vividly before me. You know what happened? I told her after the game. I went up to her because I saw the long look on her face. After the game. Well, after the game, guess what? There was another game on. I said, Monday night. You don't want me to keep up with this, do you? And the Lord says, Jim, you have a problem. And I said, what is it, Jim, Lord? He says, you spend more time during the football season with football than you do with your wife. Ay, 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 ay. And I sat down and I thought about all the conversations I had. You know, because I like to play armchair quarterback with all the guys. You know, oh, he should have done this. You know, they should have done that. All that type of thing. And when I finished adding up the time that I spent with football compared to my wife, you know what the Lord asked me to do? He says, you put the Green Bay Packers away, Jim, and you spend that time with your wife. Because your marriage is floundering. So, extravagant love in that situation was calling me to make a very difficult decision. I wonder if we really looked at men's schedules and we compared the amount of time they spend on competitive sports and compared to what they spend with their wives, what do you think it would be? Or how much time they spend in the news compared to what they spend with their wives, or on the internet, or with with my two boys. My boys have become very successful right now. They're age 40 and 38. And they're wrestling because now their businesses are what? Running them. Success is running them. They've achieved their success. And they're saying, Father, what do I do? And I'm saying, well, you know what to do. What's more important? So what is God saying to you? What do you spend your time on? So tell me, what do you spend what is God saying to you right now? It doesn't just be the men. What is God asking? What do you spend more time on than the other priorities of your life? Somebody want to tell me? I told you one area. I don't want this just to be about Jim Hohnberger. This weekend hasn't been about Jim and Sally Hohnberger. It's been about what God asked us to do. We share with you what God asked us to do. What is God saying to you with your time? Anybody want to say? Come on, we're all family. We're all human beings. So you all manage your time perfectly, is that right? If you could take your whole time that you spent just last week, and record it all, and you could go to Jesus Christ tonight like Nicodemus did, and lay that right in front of Jesus, what would he say? What would he suggest to you? Come on, they want to hear this. They want to hear that it's not just Jim Hohnberger that has to struggle. They want to know other brothers and sisters have to struggle in this area. What are you doing with your time? Do I have to pick on people? I will, you know. You know me. Danielle.
We were listening to a Kenneth Copeland sermon,
Right?
and Kenneth came out, and it was God speaking directly to me. He said, you know, you can't be scattered all over the place. You got to concentrate on me. And that's where I've been. I've been scattered everywhere and not spending enough time with the Lord in the Word.
Scattered. She's been scattered all over the place. So how do you manage that? What do you do to make sure that the time, because the time is a talent, you know. You know what I do with that so I don't? This is in one of my books, Come Walk With Me. It's taken out of one of my books, the chart that I wrote when God asked me to do this. This is what I actually do. And I'm not saying I'm an example, but here's my life. This is what my life was like. A tornado. And in that tornado was distractions, expectations, duties, projects, demands, desires, social relations, church, entertainment, priorities. All that is mixed in there. And it's like a swirling tornado. And it's like, speak to me, Lord. Well, slow down, Jim. Be still and know. And I had to finally say, wait a minute. Life is running me, and it's like a tornado, and it never stops because you think it's one temporary problem. And it is. After another temporary problem, after another temporary problem, and it's always there. So with that, I decided, I wrote down life's purpose defined. So Sal and I wrote down, we have to define the purpose of life for the next 12 months. So we wrote down a real walk with God to the point that we can hear his still small voice and we follow him. Then we wrote down number 2, revitalize our marriage. And then the third priority was connecting our family. And the fourth priority was touching other people's lives, not being a Dead Sea. And the fifth priority was living a simple life. So we defined our life, all right? 5 steps. That's what we want. We want that on our tombstone. So then what I did is I wrote, is it worthy now? So the next thing that comes up, maybe it's a church project. Maybe it's an outing with the guys. Maybe it's a football game. So then I wrote down everything that comes into my life. I say, is it worthy of my time, my attention, my energy, and my talent? So when the football game comes up, I think, okay, do I really have a walk with God this week? No, guess what? Football game's gone. Period. End of discussion. Or is my wife happy? Are we revitalized? Are we in love? And the Green Bay Packers, or let's say the Denver Broncos are playing. So I look at this thing and I say, well, are the Denver Broncos, well, let's say I'm not spending time with my wife. Is the Denver Broncos worthy of my time, attention, energy, and talent? What's the answer?
No.
No. Let's say the pastor asked me to do some project at church, and I've neglected God, I've neglected my wife, and I'm not taking care of my children. Are you with me? All I got to do is what? Is it worthy of my time, attention, energy, and talent? No. So lay out your priorities. I told you what my priorities are, and she says scattered. Yes, they're all scattered. Everybody. If everybody here brought their appointment book from last week before Jesus Christ, and he would analyze it, what do you think he'd say? You're scattered. You're in a tornado. You're not managing it right. And so extravagant love does what? It deals with its time. Because we're all given 24 hours a day, aren't we? And what we do with that time determines whether we have an extravagant love in our marriage or not. And so I'll guarantee you that if you step out of here and you're going to say, I'm going to come under God, I'm going to prioritize my wife, I'll guarantee you the devil's going to step up this tornado. And you've got to be able to say, how am I going to manage my time? That's what extravagant love does. It says no to all the lower priorities. And what confuses the Christians is you're saying no to all the good. Because the Christian has gotten rid of all the evil already, right? So all that's left is the good, but the good destroys the best. And so what we do is we give all our time to the good. And the best, what?
Wow.
So hard? You better believe it is. So we're talking about extravagant love now. Love that you don't see in the church. Love that you don't see in the world. We're talking about extravagant love. That's what Jesus Christ did. He always said, Lord, what do you want me to do? He always sent it through God. Always. When Mary and Martha came to Jesus and said, come Jesus, heal your best friend Lazarus, what did Jesus do? I got to check with what? Lord, what would thou have me to do? Wait a minute, Jesus, you got the power to heal Lazarus. What do you mean, come? He's your best friend. Jesus says, no, I've got to filter it through God. God may have a different purpose. He always filtered everything through his Father. And you're not going to? Hello? Are you Buddhists or are you Christians?
Christians.
And then a Christian filters everything through God, because he said, you say, I can't of my own self do nothing. I can't even decide whether I'm going to watch the Green Bay Packer game by myself unless I filter it through God and see if I've taken care of extravagant love in my life. Ouch. Sounds a little fanatical, doesn't it? Do you want to be in love? There's a cost. There's a cost to being truly in love instead of coexisting and playing the game. And there's a cost to not being in love. You are going to pay the price either way. There is a cost. And if you choose not to follow the principles of God, you're going to pay the price. And it's going to be ugly. It's not good. But if you choose to pay the price, and we're talking about a price here, aren't we? Because there's things that have to be excluded. We have to prune, don't we? We have to take things away. Any gardener knows that if you go to a tomato plant and pick off some buds, that the remaining tomatoes are much larger and juicier, aren't they? Pruning is good, but we don't like to do it. So I pruned things away so I had more time for what? That's why we're in love today. Because I said no to all those other things and I said yes to my wife. And I give that time to her. Now you have to ask what you're going to do. Third point. Extravagant love is measured by the sacrifice you are willing to enter into. So somebody here want to tell me what sacrifice you're willing to enter into for your marriage right now? Come on, be vulnerable, will you? Come on now. I've been vulnerable with you for 5 nights in a row. When my wife was canning the other day, what did I tell you happened with me? Remember the struggle I had? My wife's in the kitchen canning. It's 6:30 at night. I'm tired. I want to read. I want to sit in my chair, and the whole kitchen needs to be cleaned up. Was there a sacrifice that had to be entered into? Because extravagant love does what? What does it do? It sacrifices. What's the sacrifice God's calling you to?
Not my will, but thy will be done.
Sally says, not my will, but thy will be done. Somebody share with me, what's the sacrifice God's calling you to? Because this is about you. Are you willing to pay the price for extravagant love? So why is it so quiet? You afraid of extravagant love? It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's nice to get out of that tornado. It's wonderful to look in your wife's eye and see nothing there but love. It's powerful, So what's the sacrifice God's calling you to?
I know mine is affirmation. More affirmation on little things Mark does for me. Sometimes I just take things for granted.
And what happens when you give your husband affirmation?
Big little smile.
Why is that? He's 60 years old. Why does he smile when you just affirm him?
It's because I'm just looking at him and telling him that I appreciate him.
Do you like that, Mark?
extremely.
What does that happen to you when she does that, when she affirms you for some little thing?
It's nice to be honored or
Respected?
acknowledged. It's kind of like a two-way street. You give back and it gives and it just keeps growing, you know. The same thing can happen in reverse by negative things.
Anybody want to share what God is asking you to sacrifice in your relationship? For her, she's going to affirm her husband more. What about you? What are you going to do? What is God asking you to sacrifice? And I know He's asking you because God is not a silent God. The Bible says, and the Word was made flesh. Why did it call Jesus Christ the Word? Because He speaks. He speaks in your heart. He speaks in your conscience. He speaks to you. Because you don't want to come to this seminar and just say, oh, that was good, I got to give that book to somebody. No, this is about putting it in practice. And that's scary. Because some of us have built up this existence where we're in charge and we're afraid to let go of it. Mike?
Well, today I was moving some stuff around, and I have an excavator with a thumb on it, particularly. And anyway, I had a lot of stuff to move. Some old wood-burning stoves, an old name tag washing machine that's back early 50s or whatever. And my wife really likes this washing machine. Why, I don't know. To me, it's a piece of junk.
Amen.
And I needed to move it for various reasons. And it's so easy to just take that excavator and just grab a hold of that washing machine and crunch it a little bit and put it in the trailer to move it. But I says, she wants it, she likes it, she doesn't want it crunched. And so I got out, hooked up a chain, put it on the bucket, so I could wrap it around the washing machine, pick it up, set it in the trailer, and set it down, and take it out likewise. And so there's no damage to this washing machine. And so, yeah, it took more time for me getting out of the trailer and out of the excavator and hooking and unhooking the chain. But when she sees it, she's going to be happier that I didn't crunch it. So that was my sacrifice.
And love won, didn't it? Simple sacrifice, isn't it? But there's a struggle that goes with that. Anybody else want to share a sacrifice that they've gone through or are going through? Speak loud.
When I came back from Ohio, the house was a little bit of a mess, and then I brought all my stuff. It was even more of a mess, and I've been feeling quite sick. And when he went to work all day, I knew the Lord was speaking to me. You got to clean the whole thing up. But it was everything was everywhere, and cleaning is not my favorite thing. But I knew that it would make him happy to come home to everything being clean. So I cleaned it up, and I made some food while not feeling good. And I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't married.
And you have an excellent excuse. You're with child, you have morning sickness, right?
Yeah. So
Praise God, you sacrificed, right?
Yeah.
Somebody else had their hand up over here. Bob, you pass it over to Bob. What sacrifices God asked for? Because they don't. You heard about us all week. They want to hear about you folks.
My wife
Put it up
will
closer.
be working on something, and I'll see her out of the. Really? My wife will be working on something. I'll see her out of the corner of my eye that she's doing that, and it would work better if I helped her. And just since coming to these seminars, I hear that little voice that says, go help her. And I've done it maybe 4 or 5 times a day. Maybe I clean coffee stains off the countertop, maybe I wash the dishes, maybe I help her make the bed. But she is wearing a pretty nice smile.
So it's affecting your marriage, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's already applying the principles, and what's happening? There's a bigger smile on his wife's face. Isn't that beautiful? That's simple. And he wasn't doing it before. Anybody else want to share how they're sacrificing, what God is asking you to do? Earhart?
So last night, Elise and I had a little discussion about how I never listen to her, and every time she speaks, I just try to fix her problems. And generally, that's, I just turn around in bed, turn the light off, and say, "All right, good night, babe. You're really emotional right now because you're pregnant."
Right.
But no, I kind of came under God. I said, "Babe, you know what? Tomorrow, I won't work, and we'll spend the day together." So today, we actually went up to Uray. Did a little hiking in the mountains, and it was beautiful. So I sacrificed work, but I spent time with my wife.
Amen. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? And they're young and married, right? Anybody else want to share how God has asked you to sacrifice? See, he's coming under God. The seminar's working. Are you with me? It's working. It's coming through. And then God wants to take our batting average, and he wants us what? He wants us to get better. Nobody gets it perfect right away, do they? But he wants it to increase. Anybody else want to share a sacrifice? Come on. Come on. I know God's working every one of your lives. God's working constantly. He's always speaking. The problem is we're not listening. One more sacrifice before we go on. Come on. I'm not going to go on until I get one more sacrifice out of you people. The people want it. Bob over here. Come on. Oh, you be a good boy. You tell us what God has asked you to say.
The camera can pick it up, or
it's a kind of a stretch when you're working and then you get off of work, basically an hour before I get here. Everybody's probably fighting the same issue, time management. And so I get home, and typically in our house, we kind of share the load on cooking. But the last couple of nights, I've just come home and then I go ahead and cook the meal, get something ready to eat. And then she usually is behind me getting home. And she actually says thanks and smiles.
Your spouse wants to know that they are valuable, don't they?
Amen.
So now we're going to close this session and open it up for questions. Any questions? We always give questions, and after the questions, then I want a one-sentence no. God would like to know. Your brothers and sisters here would like to know what's happened to you during this. One-sentence testimony, okay? So let's answer the questions and just one-sentence testimonies from people. Was there a hand over here? I saw Bob, you got a question? Look out the woods and I'd say, no. No, thank you. No, I can't. No, no, no. No, no, no. And I got pretty good at saying no. And my friends couldn't stand it. What do you mean, Jim? You can't tell me no. I have to say no in order to say yes to God. So I had to simplify my life, whatever that means for you. Okay? For me, it went down from 5 cars to 1 car. For me, it went from 4 phones to 1 phone. We still only have 1 car today and 1 phone. Why? Are we made righteous by a simple life? No, it only aids us to have more time for the things that count. So I had to simplify my life. I had to say no to a lot of good things. Are you with me? No to a successful career. The career was owning me. The 6-figure income was controlling my time. So I had to simplify my life for Sally and I. You're going to have to simplify your life because you're too busy. Even you retired people. Neil came over the other day and he looked like he was about dead. I said, how can you be so busy? You're 75 years old, you're retired. What's going on? He's not saying no to enough things. So simplify. You must simplify. Ephesians says, how does it say? Ephesians, I think it's 4, it says, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Redeeming the time. Gaining your time back. So you can put in your priorities. Number 2, when you simplify, now you can prioritize. And then you've got to say, what are the real priorities in my life? When I ask people when they come in for marriage counseling, I ask them, give me your priorities. And they tell me all their priorities. I say, now tell me what you spent time on last week. And they never match. Mentally, they'll tell you what the priorities are, and practically, they don't follow. There's always a temporary problem that steals the priorities. No. No. Sally is a priority, period. I can remember when the businessman came walking up. I give Sally at noon swing time. We go out on the swing and we swing. It was 10 after 12. The businessman came up and comes walking to where Sal and I were standing and says, Jim, I need to talk to you. I said, Carl, is it an emergency? He didn't like the question. And he said, well, no. And I says, well, this is my time with my queen. I says, you can go to the house, get a glass of water, I'll be in 20 minutes. He went into the house, and a little bit later I saw him come to the picture window, and he's just standing in the picture window watching us on the swing, and he's just shaking his head and drinking his water. Jim can't do this to me. Yes, I can do this to you. And I will do this to you because she's important. And that's our time. She is a priority. Not everything that comes in. So you have to prioritize.
Well, you made me feel valuable. I wasn't last on the list.
She felt valuable. She wasn't last on the list. I said no to an important businessman. No, Carl, you can wait. Later on, Carl said to me, so that's what you meant in that sermon by saying no. He said, I didn't like it. I said, my wife did. God did. You must prioritize. If you do not prioritize, the devil will run your schedule, I guarantee it. Circumstances will run your life. You must prioritize. Jesus prioritized everything. And you're not going to? So, what do? Simplify, prioritize, and what's the third thing? You cultivate. You cultivate a sensitivity to God's presence with you, so you're not running this program. You're not deciding what you simplify. You're not deciding what you prioritize. You're cultivating everything through God. That means you filter everything through God. Lord, do you want me to go to the Broncos game? No. I want you to do some church work. I want you to hand out Thanksgiving baskets so other people in town can be blessed. Well, I don't like handing out. I didn't ask you if you like handing it out. Are you with me? You filter everything through God. You cultivate. You cultivate a sense and a dependency upon the vine. Jesus Christ is the vine. This is radical Christianity, by the way. What would happen if every Christian simplified, prioritized, and cultivated everything through God? Jesus would come tomorrow. Because his work would be done. Because he'd finally have a demonstration that Christians really live in the image of God. And that's all he's waiting for. For us. He's not waiting for the world to get more Bibles. He's waiting for Christians to demonstrate that this thing really works. And when he has a demonstration, he's coming. And he wants that demonstration to come through you.
We have to come out of ordinary religion in order to find the real deal.
Simplify, prioritize, and what? Cultivate. Woo! Tough stuff, isn't it? John?
Yeah, I've got a question. I've been looking in my Bible, and I obviously got the wrong verse. What verse did you talk about the foxes?
That would have been in Solomon 2 verse 15. Catch all the foxes. Notice it says all. Don't leave any of those little critters around. Those little foxes before they ruin the vineyard of your life. Catch those foxes. And when a friend comes to you and he's complaining about his wife, do what I did with Neil. Have the courage to say to your buddy, your wife isn't the problem, you are. Neil didn't like me. He avoided me for a month. Now we're good friends. Because he knows every time he comes to my house, we're not talking about his wife. A good friend challenges their buddy or their sister, right? They don't talk about the quarterback and the Broncos. That's elevator talk. Are you with me? They don't talk about their golf score. They don't talk about the White House. Oh, really, all your great wisdom's going to fix the White House, right? God isn't concerned and doesn't ask you to do what's going on in the White House. He asks what's going on in your house.
Amen.
That's how you change the world. It isn't done with Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians. It's done with converted Christians that have the gospel in their life. That's what's going to change. Not the White House. That's why Neil and I are buddies today, because I challenge him. He doesn't always like it, by the way. Sometimes he spits and spews. But that's a good friend, isn't it? Isn't it real? They'd like to hear it.
That road has two sides to it, doesn't it, Jim?
That road has two sides to it. Another question before we have one sentence testimonies.
I'll wait for the one sentence testimony.
Okay.
I have a question. How can some of these principles be used in the effective rearing of children? Is that a hard question?
Well, it's a beautiful question.
Repeat the question.
How can these principles that we are talking about be used in rearing godly children? When I was back in Wisconsin, I wasn't living this. I was the head elder of the church. The church baptized 12 people that came into our church from our Bible studies. But at home, I was treating her like dirt, you know. My children saw that, and then we moved to the mountains. 2 years after we had put these principles into practice, my boys were making noise upstairs. They were 6 and 8 years old. Got that? 6 and 8 years old. They saw the before, and I was going to the right church. I knew who the beast was. I was a baby. I didn't go to the Dairy Queen. Didn't drink an A&W. Are you with me? Pretty good stuff, huh? My boys are making noise up in their bedroom. We're up in Montana now. God asked me to put these principles in. I started walking up the stairs to talk to my boys, and I heard my youngest son, who was 6 years old, say to his older brother, who was 8, "Father isn't the same as he was before." I stopped. I stopped. And then I heard Matthew say to Andrew, "No, he doesn't yell at mother anymore. And he plays with us now." And then I heard Andrew say to Matthew, "I think he found Jesus." I sat on the stairs and I cried like a little baby. How do these principles affect our children? My boys have great marriages today because they saw the transition their father went through from being religious and churchianity to finding a walk with God.
They also saw the cost.
And they saw the cost too. And so, if we will live it, if only the Christians would not even evangelize the world. I'm not saying that, okay, because we're called to evangelize. But if we just evangelize our own children. Are you with me?